Hook Setters Line Wetters, welcome back to another Hook Setters TV video. In this video I'm going to show you the difference between pitching and flipping and punching, some tricks and techniques, and where you should be throwing these baits. Stay tuned. What's up, people? So what I decided to do was make a video and show the difference between pitching, flipping, and punching. A lot of people get it confused. Both of them work year round, so they're both great techniques to have in your arsenal, but it is a little different. So I know people like to, they think it's pretty much the same thing, but it's not. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna start off with your pitching and flip rig, which is pretty much the same as a punch. You have your weight, only difference is the weight is gonna be smaller, at least in my case. This is an ounce. When I punch, I like to go to 1.5 ounces. You still have your bait, your favorite bait, and what you can use with your hook, with these ones, you can go a little lower, or a little smaller, should I say, as far as how stout it is, because you're not fishing heavy cover. So you can use a worm hook, and you can use like a 4/0, but use a thicker 4/0 hook, and you don't need a bobber stop. So you see this one is just straight weight to my hook with the bait on it. That's all it is. The rod you can use with this, you can go to a medium heavy. It doesn't have to be a heavy or super heavy rod, because you're flipping in 2 leads or, you know, brushing stuff that's in kind of open water. The 2 lead is the only thing that you're really fighting against, you know, plus the fish. Where you're punching, you're fishing under something, a heavy mat with a lot of vines and sticks and stuff like that. This, you don't really need a real heavy rod, because you're not pulling them through too much. You're just trying to get them out of a 2 lead, and a lot of time they'll come out and they'll hit that bait outside of the 2 leads. So you're fine with like a medium heavy rod. You don't have to go super heavy. Where you want to flip these, you want to flip this bait to 2 lead points, 2 lead pockets, canals, fallen trees, and brush. Here I have a couple of spots that I really like to fish with your 2 lead points. So typically when you're fishing these baits around the 2 leads, the points, or you know, the canals are inside the 2 leads or the pockets, typically the bite you're going to get is going to be like a punch, which is going to just stop. And then you'll get another tug right after, so it'll be like boom, boom. And what that is, a lot of times, that fish is crushing down on the bait, trying to kill it, and then he's picking it up and he's going back to where he came from. Sometimes it's just going to be straight weight, like a wet rag, which is you pitched it right where he was sitting. He don't have to go anywhere. He'll hit the bait and he'll just gobble it up. You probably won't even feel a tick. And especially like now going into winter, it's going to be pretty cold. They're going to be very stagnant. So you won't feel anything, but you'll lift up to try to move your bait and it won't do anything, or it'll slowly start coming. And that's just the fish just hanging on and he's not doing anything. You want to set the hook. So typically those are the 2 bites you're going to see when you're fishing, when you're pitching and flipping these type of baits. So here you see me fishing a point, and you'll see the fish hit, boom, boom, real quick. He tried to kill it and take it back. That's what he was doing. He was trying to go back to where he was sitting, which was probably inside the 2 lead somewhere. Set the hook, got him on. He tried to run that right back into the... Yep. It's a fat one. Fat one. So here you see me fishing the pocket. You got a line of sparse 2 leads on the outside of the pocket, and in the back of the pocket behind it you have 3 points. Remember I said to fish the points. So this is a really good area to try to flip and pitch. It's usually your fish sitting right in that pocket and he has a bunch of options to choose from. Flip in there and see what happens. That's a fatty. That's a fatty. That's a fatty. I don't do that. I got braids. Fuck it. Shit. Y'all see that chunky monkey? Hunky monkey. This next clip, I'm fishing another point, Thule Point, highlighted by the arrow. Flip right in front of it. Fish sitting there. There we go. It's a nice one. That's a good one. That's a fatty. That's a fatty. Yeah. That's a fatty. Come on, baby. Come on here. That's a fatty. That's a fatty. That's a fatty. Give me your mouth. Give me your mouth. Give me your mouth. Give me your mouth. Oh, hell yeah. Oh, my goodness. This clip here is really good because if you see the point, you can see the water moving. That current is pushing right across that point, which is 100% what you want to look for. Toss there, let the current move across. There's a fish waiting there for a bait to come across it, and boom. Baby. Open your mouth. Open your mouth. Open your damn mouth. It's another drag baby. Now in this last clip, you can see right where my bait hit, and it's perfectly placed right on that Thule Point. Tossed right there, in no more than a couple seconds, the fish are just sitting there. This is that wet rag bite that I told you guys about. I was trying to jig and it wouldn't move. It was just straight weight. Set the hook. Game on. It's a good one. Should have had the net out. We should have had the net out. We should have had the net out. That's a good one. It's behind me. Go get it, go get it. See, this is where his life jacket usually is at. Never mind, I got him. Got it. Good boy. Yes, sir. Oh my God. Yickety. So now I'm gonna go through the punch rig, and I'll make this short. I have a video on it. I don't know how many of you seen it, but only difference with the punch rig, like I said before, you want bobber stoppers, which is gonna stop your weight from going up and down. You want a bigger weight. I always use 1.5 ounces. You sometimes go bigger depending on how thick the stuff is that you're trying to fish. Punch skirt. And the only difference with the hook, when you're really punching, like I say, you can use a smaller, thinner hook when you're just flipping and pitching. But when you go to the punch rig, and there's pros and cons with this. You want a thicker hook. I use Mustad hooks, like a 6. But you see, these are much more thicker than what I use when I'm pitching and flipping. These are way more thicker. You have to be, because you're going in a bunch of vegetation and you're just fishing in a bunch of slop. You're gonna need this real stout hook. If you hook onto a big fish, those other hooks will bend out. That's the pro. That's good. The con, these don't have anything to hold your bait. So I like using a worm hook when you're pitching and flipping because it has somewhere for your bait to sit on. This holds your bait on, but usually after a bite of a nice sized fish, your bait's tore up and you're not using it again. So you're gonna go through packs and packs and packs of bait, which I hate with these hooks. More stout, hookup ratio's great. Get the fish in a boat, dragging it through that stuff, but you go through about $100 worth of bait a day. using these. That's the only cons with it. So you could kind of play with it as you want. Sometimes I take a risk. Sometimes I'll punch with a thick, worm hook, but I'll count my losses. But I do it sometimes. We all jump through hoops sometime as fishermen. So I'm gonna let you guys decide what you want to do. So that's the only difference. You got your bobber sock, bigger weight, punch skirt, and then same thing, your hook with your bait that you decide to use. Now, when it comes to rods and reels, you do need a heavy to an extra heavy rod when you come to punching. You pulling up pounds and pounds of fish and vegetation, and you get hung on branches and all the stuff on that pole. I've had instances I've lost a couple poles by not doing it the right way, and I won't do it again. I make sure I have me a heavy rod. I usually use a heavy rod, but sometimes you hook on that big one and you really need an extra heavy. Sometimes it can be a lot. You fishing with it all day, you flipping and pulling up stuff with a heavier rod. If it's a real comfortable heavy rod that's pretty light, or extra heavy rod, do your thing. I usually stick with a heavy. Like I said, it depends on how thick the stuff is. I'll have both on my boat, that's for sure. But sometimes you fishing in hyacinth and grass that's 3 feet up, and you're really down there deep in some crazy amount of stuff. So extra heavy will really come in handy. You want a fast rod so you could catch up to the fish as you reel down, and you set that hook and you could get it up out of there. So you want to go pretty much fast as you can to get that fish up out of there. So when it comes to rod and reel, that's what you want to focus on. I didn't go over this earlier, but even with the flipping and pitching, you want to use braid. I usually stay around 65-pound braid. When you go into punching, you can go up to 100. You can't get too thick. You can go out there with a rope because you want to make sure you get that fish in. You have your line. The thing with the 65, when you flipping and punching, your line is not really rubbing up a bunch of stuff, so it's gonna hold up for you for a long time. When you punching, your line is rubbing up against branches and sticks and rocks, and you pulling the fish out of there. The resistance from the fish to the hook is rubbing up against something, and a lot of those times things they'll act as a knife, and it wears down just like anything else. So you still have to be conscious on what braid you use. I know a lot of people go bigger because they want to make sure they get that fish out of there and you don't have to retie as much, but even with braids you need to retie. I'll typically stay around 65, 70, and I'll just keep retying. I'll take my chances, but you want to go real big on your braid. So make sure you got braid when you're flipping and punching. When you're flipping and pitching, not as big, 65, and then you can go a little higher if you're punching for your braid. So what do you punch? Everything. Hyacinth, duckweed, Brazilian duckweed, primrose, everything. You see it, it's punchable, believe me. Now, where do you punch? The depth I like to fish, and I mix a lot of people up a lot of time when I say this, I like to punch 10 to 6 feet. Now, normally you say the lower number first, you go to the biggest number, but it's a reason why I say that. And this is a mistake a lot of people make, and I found out the hard way. A lot of people like to punch to the shallowest water and then come out deep to see if they're there. But if you get on a good bite, let's say you're fishing a mat, and there's fish sitting at 10 feet of that mat, on the edge of that mat, and there's also fish sitting in the back at 4 to 5 or 6 feet behind the 10 feet fish. If you go after those feet closest to the bank or in that shallow water first, and you're hitting them up and you're having a heck of a day, and you dragging big fish out of just fish in general, and you're bringing them across those fish that are in the 10 feet, you're going to disturb those fish. Those fish aren't going to cooperate like you want them to when you try to go towards the front of that mat. So what you want to try to do, you want to try to pick off those fish closest in the deeper water, which is the 10 feet, which is going to be closest to you. You hit that line. What I usually do is I go down, I'll fish the closest part of the mat to me, which is the deepest, 10 feet, and then I'll circle back and go back to where I started, and then I'll start flipping into the 4 feet to 5 feet, 6 feet, or whatever the case it is, a little behind that 10 feet, whatever depth that may be. You'll be surprised how many times I've done both the wrong way. I've fished shallow, went back, didn't get anything on the outside. I fish deep, go back, fish shallow, and then I'll have the same success in the shallow part of the water that I did when I was fishing deeper. So you have to take that into consideration. So you always start deep, then finish back. You always start deep, and then you go into shallow, and that's how you should fish a mat. People always ask, what should you expect when you get bit? There's no single answer for that. There's a bunch of different bites that you can feel when it's punching, and because the fish are doing a bunch of different things. The first one is the bait will never ever sink. So let's say you're fishing 8 feet of water under a mat. You're flipping it, you're under the mat, you're jigging, you go to a couple, you know that there's a depth there, right? And you've been fishing this depth, you flip it, you wait for it to hit the bottom, you bring it up. One time you flip in there and your bait never hits the bottom. It's not because if you can't see it on top of that mat, more than likely it went through that mat and the fish grabbed it as soon as it went through the mat. That's the first kind of bite that you're going to get. The next one is what I like to call a machine gun bite. You'll flip in there, you'll be jigging, and you feel like tap, tap, tap. And through my experience, a lot of times that's a smaller fish because they're so active, they're just biting in there, just running with it, or they're pulling on one of the tentacles or something like that. But it's not a real big fish. But I call it a machine gun bite. It's like a machine gun. It just tap, 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 and you'll keep tapping. A lot of times you'll set the hook, you won't come up with nothing, you'll be missing a piece of your bait or something like that. Another bite will be, like I mentioned before, the wet rag bite, which is just straight weight. You'll go, you'll flip, you'll jig your bait, you go, you'll flip, and then the next time you try to jig, it's just heavy. So if your bait is going straight down through a mat, it's not moving anywhere. It's one little hole. It hasn't went anywhere. So if your bait all of a sudden stops jigging where you're fishing around nothing in a clear bottom, the fish obviously has it. Sometimes you're not going to even be able to jig. You're going to flip in, you're going to feel it hit the bottom, you're going to try to come up, and it's going to be just straight weight. That's also a fish. So I call that the heavyweight bite. There's also a bite that I call the running bite, which is a fish is going to grab it. He's going to see you. He's going to see your bait. He could be coming from a couple feet away or whatever. You're going to be doing your thing. He's going to go to that bait. He's going to come from somewhere. He's going to go pick the bait up and try to go back to where he went. You could tell this bite just because your line is going to start running. You could be just holding your rod, not doing anything, and all of a sudden the grass starts moving where your line is. If you're not doing anything, there's something on the other line pulling your line. So I call that the running bite. And then the same as I mentioned earlier, you have the hard knock bite, which is he's trying to crush it. It's on the ground. He's either trying to crush it up against the ground, or you're going to jig up and you're going to feel that punch, and it's just that he's grabbing it and he's trying to kill that bait right away. So I call that the hard knock bite. So those are a couple bites that you can look forward to seeing or feeling, as you're punching. As it gets colder, it gets a little, how can I put it? It's going to be majority of that heavy bite because the fish aren't that active. So if they're eating, they're real sluggish. They're just going to go try to pick it up. They don't have the strength. They're cold. They're stagnant. They're, their mobility is slower. Everything is a little slower. Metabolism is down. They're not eating as much. They probably just want one big meal. But they know they don't have to work super hard to get a meal, especially if it's like a crawfish or something like that. So you're going to get those softer, just heavy bites. It won't be real active bites in the wintertime. You'll get more of those like spring and summer and fall and stuff like that. So here you see me flip, and like I said, you want to start deepest, and you see me flip right on the edge. That's the 10-foot mark. I don't want to start in the back and catch those fish first. Literally a couple seconds in, I don't think this bait ever hit the bottom. As soon as it hit the bottom, he hopped on it, and he was on there. That's a good one. This one here, you see me flip. I'm waiting for it to hit the bottom. Make sure it gets through, hits the bottom. Go down and jig it. 1, 2, stop. The rod just stopped. It was a bite. This one here, same thing. Fishing outside, edge of the mat. Don't want to go too deep first. Catch those fish in the front first before you go to the back. Just waiting, and this fish was on it the whole time. He was on it the whole time. I could have caught that fish a couple seconds before, and he choked it. Flip in, make sure it drops as soon as it hit bottom. Like I said, I reel up and start doing my thing. He's on there. I'm just raising up to make sure the weight is there. And as soon as I realized it was weight, I realized the fish was on there. No time at all. There's a good one. There's a good one. There's a good one. here, I flip in, make sure it's synced to the bottom. It's at the bottom. Once I know it's at the bottom, I reel down. Then you'll see the tip, tap, tap, tap. He's on there. Make sure he has it. Set the hook. This is the running bite I told you about. Toss in, make sure it's there. You'll see the grass move. I'm not doing anything, but the grass starts moving. Right there. That's the fish pulling the line. Set the hook, get him in the boat. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. This is another what I call wet rag bite. You jig a couple times, you just feel the weight. I lift up a little to make sure he's there. Set the hook. You just feel like a wet rag. He's coming up slowly with the bait, but he's not really moving until you set the hook, and then he gives a resistance once he realizes that he's hooked. This is another line runner where the grass moves, and I'll do a close up to show you, but I'm in there. The grass just starts moving. I wasn't doing anything. You see the grass just start running. The line starts running. The grass is moving. I'm not doing anything right now. Set the hook, fish on. This right here is a sudden bite. Close to the edge. This is a big mat too. I killed the edge of it and the back of it, but as soon as I tossed in, fish was there. As soon as I tossed in, he was on it. Well, there you have it, hook setters. I've been planning on doing this video for a while now. I just been lollygagging and didn't take the time or really have the time to sit and do it, but I'm glad I finally got it out the way. I know people question some time and have questions, or they ask, and I haven't really been able to get to them or tell them. So this is what I've learned as I failed over the years of fishing, as far as like punching and flipping. So these little tweaks that I've done and what I've told you that I was doing wrong, I failed big time. I've broke poles, I've lost big fish, and it all comes with experience, and doing it the wrong way a lot of times it teaches you a lot. So through my failures, I hope y'all learned something. I hope it answered any questions. Going forward, even though it's year round, the one technique that I believe is going to be more effective now as it gets colder is going to be the pitching and flipping, only because a lot of the vegetation and stuff that you down see on certain waterways is going to disappear. It doesn't have the sun, it doesn't have the water temperature, and they're going to start dying off. So a lot of the places that you have mats won't be mats, it'll just be sticks and vines in the water, and there's nothing for the fish to hide under. With that being said, if you find any during this winter time coming up, if you find any mats that still hold, it don't even have to be the healthiest grass, but just have a mat, fish it, because the fish still want to veer and gravitate towards that stuff. So it's a high percentage chance there's fish there if you find something that you can punch with, of course, the right water depth and everything. Like I said, going forward, I hope this helped. Hope you guys go out there and have success. Hope y'all get on some fatties, some slouches, some belly shirts, and have a good winter. Until next time, y'all, thanks for tuning in. Y'all stay hooks and tight lines.